Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome here as Iowa Speedway plays host to race number 12 of BackFire Sim Racing, preparing for the running of the Blackgate Security 200. Short track here may end up having a huge part to play in terms of who the final four will be when we get to Homestead Miami Speedway. I'm Seth Cole alongside of Matthew Rodriguez. And Matt, what do you think? A track that's under a mile in length here for these drivers and coming into the second race of the playoffs, just coming off the heels of last week's mile-and-a-half race at Chicagoland. So, obviously, I would have to assume there are some drivers that had this track circled on their schedule, but there's other drivers that were thinking, oh no, why are we going here?
See, and that's the thing where Iowa has been heavily touted as a kind of a driver's track. The package doesn't really suit this track, but if you're a really good driver, you've got great car control, this is your night.
We're going to have to wait and see what happens here this evening. Will a playoff contender actually win? As last week it was James Cato playing spoiler, picking up his second win on the season, but he is not in playoff contention. Now, it is not a win and you're in situation for these playoff contenders, but nonetheless, you win the race, you're going to get maximum points, and that could certainly help you in your quest to get up into the top four. Let's see if we can go down trackside now for pre-race ceremonies, and we're going to start things off with our invocation here tonight, courtesy of Pastor Zach Woods.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we thank you for this time together where we can gather on iRacing and meet up with new friends here on Friday nights. We thank you for technology like this, that we can come out and do our passions here virtually online. And Lord, tonight we just pray that the words that we speak to one another are fruitful and beneficial unto you, and let us have a good race tonight. In your name we pray. Amen.
And let's honor America with the singing of our national anthem. Please welcome Raina Osby.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and all of the brave?
200 laps here tonight at Iowa Speedway, heading into the twilight area of this evening, which means the track's probably going to start cooling down as the sun starts to set behind the hills. But one thing that we were observing in practice here, Matt, and you were touching on a little bit here, is the ability to get off of the corners seems to be a problem spot for these drivers here tonight. Now, granted, drivers will utilize practice to be able to, push the car to its limits to see what they can do for qualifying, but obviously other drivers would be out there for a long run, and we saw a lot of drivers hit the wall off of turn 4, other drivers just looping it around off of turn 4. What is it about this particular track that seems to make corner exit be the place that they're really going to have to manage here tonight?
Well, it's so easy to go back and look at these cars of this current package. What they run at Iowa is the low downforce package, and these low downforce cars, they really suffer in all these corners trying to get rear end grip coming out. So obviously, when you're going off of turn 4 and you've got no rear end grip, it will mess it up too much. You're going to easily spin it right out of 4, go right in the infield. You've got to take it a little bit easy on these corner exits while still kind of pushing the envelope.
We're going to be talking about tires here tonight as well. Iowa is one of those few short tracks out there where there actually is progressive banking, and so that right front is certainly going to be taking a beating when they head into corners 1 and 3. Take a look at your starting lineup for tonight's event. We talked about James Cato. He's been a fly in the ointment for these playoff drivers. He's going to snag the pole position here tonight alongside of 3-time winner Matthew Robinson. Jeremy Richmond, who's still looking for his first trip to victory lane, he'll roll off third alongside of TJ Roberts. Completion of the top 5 is going to be Patrick McQuaid, who's only making his second start on the season. As we show you back through the rest of your starting lineup, I mean, obviously you talked about it pre-broadcast here, Matt. 2 different strategies that these drivers can utilize here if we end up going into a long run.
Absolutely. We've got my patented strategy, but I absolutely love, which is really running the car aggressive, at least in the first 10, 15 laps, using up those tires, take it to your advantage, make some moves while you've got all the cars that are close together. Now, obviously, you're going to end up running a lot of front brake with that. You're going to have to brake hard into the corners, but as the run goes on, as you start to lose that rear end grip, you start moving the brake bias back to the rear end so you can keep it a bit more stable. That obviously puts you at a very big deficit as we go later into the run, having to defend older, kind of maybe questionable tires, as we'd say. Or you can take it easy on the start and then wait for those guys who would burn up their stuff early to kind of make your way through the field, but you're going to have to deal with the regular tire degradation. So it's kind of a split strategy here.
Now, we had a number of playoff contenders you saw there on the starting grid, peppered through the field, some starting at the back, some starting in the middle, some starting at the front. Some of the notables starting at the back include Zachary Woods, Corey Saucier, Noah Owens. So does starting track position here tonight affect what type of a strategy, which side of the coin you would be in terms of push hard or conserve?
Absolutely, but maybe not in the way that you think. For some of the guys in front, they maybe feel like a little bit more pressured to kind of keep that top position and running the car a little bit harder than they should. While guys in the back also heavily kind of prone to that as well of, hey, I'm already back in the pack. I really need to start working my way through. I think we'll see a little bit of a stretch of both in the back.
Obviously, with this track officially being 0.875 miles in length, it is a short track, so these drivers will have 2 pace laps here before we put them under the green flag. Coming off the heels of Chicagoland, obviously, as we mentioned, it's going to be the top 4 in point standings in these 4 playoff races that will advance into the Final 4, the championship Final 4 at Homestead Miami Speedway. Right now, Matthew Robinson, DJ Daniel, Corey Saucier, and Christopher Lawrence, they hold those positions. J.R. Miller is only 1 point back. Zachary Woods only 2 points back. Kyle Gartner and Kyle Phillips, they are both 4 points back. Brock Silvati is 6 points out. Jordan Stenzel, 7 points back. Chris Hupke, 8 points back. Noah Owens right now sits 10 points back, and then only a maximum of 18 points back is where you find drivers Santiago, Richmond, Santoyo, and Jones. So it's still awfully close, which is why definitely here tonight, this short track could play a big factor, could be a huge point swing for certain drivers.
And you just kind of have to take it now. Obviously, you know, on these restarts, it gets so chaotic, so hectic. So you got to try and plan your way through this without getting caught in one of those incidents.
Green flag is out as James Cato gets the Blackgate Security 200 underway here at Iowa Speedway. We'll see if these drivers are going to be a little bit patient here early on, try and wait for the track to come to them. But I say that, and I saw them almost 3 wide going into turn 1 around the 10th position.
Yeah, I started looking back in the field. Looks like Zachary Woods, he really had a lot of issues on the restart. But obviously, it looks like the 7 of Josh Anderson had a lot of issues on that restart. He pulled way high in 1. He's managed to get it back underway now.
And Sizemore did the same, went up to that 3rd groove in 3 and 4 to let drivers by. And now another driver jumping up there. I believe that's TJ Roberts in the 11. That is dropping back towards the latter half of the top 10 as Matthew Robinson managed to get around James Cato on the top side. So we're seeing at least the outside line early on be the preferred way, the faster way around the racetrack.
See a distinct cutoff of guys who are seem really comfortable with their cars and the guys who really don't seem that, set with their cars. I'd say that divides probably about from 11th on forward. You see guys who are kind of comfortable with their car, willing to battle side by side. Anyone really back from that area are guys who seem to be taking it a bit easier, kind of giving each other more room because they just don't know what the rear end of their cars would do.
definitely some contact exchange there for 7th place. TJ Roberts was coming down. Brock Salvati was drifting up. They did touch doors, but they kind of hit pretty evenly, so both were able to continue on. And that's going to be a thing that we're going to be keeping an eye on here as well, of who's going to be able to have the better corner speed. You kind of want to pretty much exit out of the corner the way that you entered in. That means you're not going to necessarily be using up that right front tire, but what we saw there, the slide by Salvati, that's going to wear those tires down a lot quicker.
I mean, you got to think also what really affects that is your entry into the corner. Obviously, if you drive it deeper into the corner every lap, you're sacrificing that exit, but you're getting a better entry, and that may help later into the race with kind of spinning off of one of these corners. But you got to think, hey, that's putting a lot more wear on your right front. That's going to start wearing down and make it almost impossible to drive in.
Watching ahead, the battle for 8th place, DJ Daniel, 3-time winner. Look at the inside,
out.
caution.
Oh, correct. James C. Jones looks like Modespa as well.
Jones a playoff contender. 16th out of the 16 playoff drivers coming into this race, 18 points out. Certainly could not afford a bad day. And another playoff contender just ahead of him looks like the 90 of Angel Santiago. And that car on the inside line there is the Racing with Jesus Toyota, another playoff driver in Zachary Woods.
Actually looks like it got set off by Zach Woods as well. And I heard him kind of come over the radio and start apologizing. It kind of looks like there's a miscommunication. He just didn't really know where to brake. Accidentally may have just driven into him just a little bit. Looking at Angel Santiago, Santiago actually didn't hit anything. He just locked up the brakes to make sure he didn't hit the car in front of him. So that should be, I believe, Noah Owens.
There was somebody else, that I think we were just mentioning that got clipped. Yeah, that was Owens in the 88. And that was an interesting wreck. You were talking about miscommunication in terms of braking zones. I mean, in all honesty, did it look like the 10 was going just a little too conservative into that corner?
I think he was trying to give the 60 of Zach Woods as much room as possible. Because obviously you really want to go and arc into some of these corners, but maybe just Zach just didn't understand where he had to let off. Another guy I'm kind of looking at here is David Motspa. He did an amazing job of actually not hitting anything. He did slide, and he kind of drifted by the 10, but after that, he didn't hit anything.
That was a huge hit there for Zachary Woods and James Jones. I mean, the initial contact was bad enough, but then when the 10 nosed in the outside wall, the back end actually came up on the hood of the Toyota Camry of Woods. So both of those drivers with pretty extensive damage to their machines. And as mentioned, 16th out of the 16 playoff drivers for James Jones. Zachary Woods was right on the precipice of making his way into the top 4, 2 points out, and now he's going to have to deal with damage here. Now, a lot of times when we come to short tracks here, Matt, I kind of think of Dover, Bristol, Martinsville. This is the old adage, it doesn't have to be a car that will win a beauty contest to still be up to speed. Does Iowa fit into that, or do you actually have to have a pretty pristine car to take advantage of what's rather long straightaways?
I don't know if you'd really be in winning contention, but you definitely still be a competitive car. Realistically, with a damaged car, you're obviously not going to have that straight-end speed that you're going to really crave, but you'll be almost near unstoppable in the corners if it has slowed you down enough. And as long as it still holds grip and at least a good amount of speed in the corners, you can still hang in this, but you're just going to be at a big deficit on straightaways.
Now, these drivers coming into this race are certainly, I would think, looking at last week at Chicagoland and a couple weeks from now, Kentucky, really as the places that might be their best chance to get themselves up into the Final Four, because we mentioned tonight here the short track of Iowa. Next week, we're going to the Super Speedway of Talladega. I mean, talk about a wild card race there, but for the time being, it's looking like we've got drivers up here like Matthew Robinson, Jeremy Richmond, Kyle Gartner, who, by the way, his car all green here this week. We didn't see him with the green banner last week, but he has got that car with the green banner now, so it completely blends in with his bright green paint scheme. But these are guys, obviously, that you would have to think did circle this track on the calendar, maybe to kind of counter the wild card track of Talladega next week.
That's the thing. You want to build yourself as much as a cushion where, listen, that's not saying that your Talladega is not going to go well, but just means that you don't have to worry about it as much as other drivers might have to. Where, hey, I'd rather come into Talladega with a cushion, where, hey, if I do get caught in one of these giant accidents, I don't really have to worry that much. Or, hey, if I have a top 10 run because I missed the late race charge, it's not that big of a deal. instead of, hey, I have to make Talladega my track to keep me in it. That's not a good objective there.
Update on the drivers that were involved in our first caution of the day. Noah Owens, James Jones, and Zachary Woods have all come down pit road and gotten repairs. So Woods been down pit road 2 laps consecutively. He still remains on the lead lap along with Owens and Jones. Ryan Sizemore, however, in the 8 car has fallen 3 laps down to leader. He's returned back to the track. Did not seem involved in that wreck. I did see him drift up the track out of turn 4 coming to the completion of the first lap. So I don't know if he got the wall and had to make an unscheduled pit stop or what, but he will be restarting this race, the only car off the lead lap back in 23rd.
So what I saw was, it looks like I was on lap 4 on the back straightaway. It almost looks like something just disconnected, where he just kind of turned straight down the track into the inside wall. I'm not exactly sure why that happened, but my guess would be, hey, the wheel maybe disconnected for just a second.
It's now got him -3. He should be able to get back in the lead lap, but I'm assuming we might have a couple more cautions before this race is over. It is a short track after all, but still a long ways to go in this one. As Robinson, no surprise, is going to take the top side here against James Cato. He used on the initial start to be able to get the lead, and Jeremy Richmond was ready.
DJ Daniel almost created a pileup with him and Christopher Lawrence. Daniel really tried to time that restart, had to slam the brakes to avoid getting in the car in front of him. Christopher Lawrence almost finished him off.
Oh, don't forget, Matthew Robinson, Jeremy Richmond, as well as DJ Daniel and Brock Silvati, they're all teammates. So obviously the race leader, Robinson, would be telling his teammates when he was going to accelerate. So they were trying to take advantage of that.
That's the thing. You got to be careful on that, because I've done it before where, hey, he held for, step place, and I'm trying to go on their start. That can really get you into trouble, since the guys behind just have no idea.
Richmond got to look to the inside of James Cato in the 3. That's for second place. Patrick McQuaid behind them. Second start of the season. Last week had a 17th place finish at Chicagoland as Richmond pushes up the track a little bit there on the inside of the 3 car. And, we ended up...
Saucier got at least a little bit of tap of the wall. He dropped back a bunch of positions.
Saucier started towards the rear of the field as well, so, we're looking at the drivers that probably were really looking forward to the short tracks. Right now, probably Saucier would be in the category of those that just want to survive Iowa and get to Talladega next week, as he now works the inside of Jordan Stencil. We saw in the initial start of this race that Robinson got around Cato on the top side. He chose the top side here. So how difficult is that going to be now for drivers to make passes? I mean, I'm seeing a couple of passes here and there, but up towards the front, when a driver jumps down to the inside line, they can't seem to be able to complete that pass on the driver on the top side.
And you see the inside line so vital of just kind of being brave and being able to send them the car so much and having grip to make that pass. On the top side is just so difficult, where I wouldn't be too surprised to see a driver get a number one's bumper just to kind of move him out of the way. But I think it's still a bit too early for him to be doing that. There's over 100 and looks like 80 laps left.
Right now you've got 3 non-playoff contenders up inside of the top 7. We're looking at one of them right here in the midst of playoff banners, TJ Roberts. He's got Gartner and Santoyo ahead of him, Daniel and Lawrence behind him. The other 2, James Cato and Patrick McQuaid, right now holding down 2nd and 3rd place. We're going to take a quick look here as it is now just about sunset. Track temperature out there only about 4 degrees higher than the actual ambient temperature of 77. We know that the track is going to continue to cool down here as this race goes on, and I have to wonder if the track starts cooling down a couple of degrees, will that allow the inside line to start to come into play as a passing lane?
Definitely could, but here's a big question. What's kind of on my mind is, are some of these guys who just did,
that's James Santoyo in the 79. He collects up the 97 of Brock Silvati.
Upka's involved.
Anderson in the 7.
10's involved again.
Here's the 90 of Santiago again involved.
That is not a good track record for those 2.
David Modespa, I think, might have gotten a piece of it. And that 5 car, hood completely ripped off. Black smoke trailing behind. Certainly not what that playoff contender wanted. Hubka coming into this one in the playoff standings, and
that's a lot of playoff contenders that just got involved.
I'm counting at least 6, maybe, possibly 7.
Ball there. I mean, he got into the wall, and as soon as he's got a little bit of contact, he was just kind of along for the ride.
And this was kind of one side of what we were talking about that we saw back in practice, with drivers just getting back to the throttle too soon, trying to carry too much speed off the corner. I mean, that car, you can see, it was so tight, it really never turned. Oh, I had another playoff contender that got a piece there. I didn't see that DJ Daniel got sent to the inside with some damage on the left front, or actually the right front of his 96.
Tell you, David Montespa he's missed both these wrecks. He has done the most impressive stops that I've ever seen. He kind of drifted up to this accident and just kind of stopped.
Look here at the 5 of Chris Hubka. Hubka, I believe, 11th of the playoff contenders. Wreck's going to take place up ahead of him, and oh wow, that's the 7 of Josh Anderson that came up the track. Completely took away the line he was running. It looked like Hubka was in one of those situations where the hole was open and he mashed the throttle to try and get through, just didn't get through in time.
I don't blame him. I would have done the exact same thing of, hey, you see your windows closing here rapidly and you're thinking, all right, I got to go.
Right on board here with the 97 of Brock Silvati. See up ahead, there is Santoyo getting the wall, and I guess you could add the 9 of Christopher Lawrence to the list that got involved. While he was not spinning, he did have a little contact made, courtesy of the 79 into his right rear quarter panel. So if you're going to add that as a driver involved, that would be another playoff contender getting caught up in the second wreck of the evening.
And see, here's the biggest thing, which is looking at this. Yes, you can always say, I can avoid that accident, but you're not factoring in the guys behind you who, hey, they're reacting to what you're doing, and they're reacting to the guys behind them, and the guys behind them are reacting to them. So it's really delayed reactions. Where you may be able to avoid that accident, but that doesn't mean the guy beside you or behind you or anywhere else around you is going to be able to avoid it.
Here you see Chris Hubka back on the track, used his faster pair. I believe that James Jones has also used his faster pair back from the first incident. And then multiple drivers came down pit lane here under this caution. Most of them involved in that incident coming down to repair damage. 22 laps into this thing, and for the most part, anybody that has not received damage of any shape or kind, they have not come down for tires. And I would have thought, at least at a track like Iowa, that tires would have been a premium, that you would at least see maybe the second half of the drivers that have not been involved in the wreck come down, try and see what fresh tires could do in their attempt to cut their way through the field.
We've always got to remember they do have limited sets in this race. Maybe just trying to preserve a little bit, because Iowa is known for at least a little bit of a tire killer later in the race. But as looking for faster pairs here at the moment, James Santoyo, Ryan Sizemore, Angel Santiago. It looks like James C. Jones, Chris Hubka, Anderson, Owens, and it looks like Owens would be the last one who took faster pairs. Everyone else has one faster pair left.
So we're waiting for the lights to go out top the pace car here. Mention the fact that Iowa is one of the few tracks out there that have what's called progressive banking. The banking actually starts at 12 degrees on the inside, up to 14 degrees when you get to the outside wall, and certainly plays a factor into drivers' ability for tire conservation. But it's interesting when you kind of do research on these tracks, you get little tidbits. I did not realize that one of the architectures of Iowa Speedway is actually former Winston Cup Series driver Rusty Wallace. It was this track was actually patterned after Richmond Raceway, a short track that Wallace had a lot of success at. So you get those nice little nuggets when you do research about these certain types of tracks.
Yeah, I'd say you'd think a current driver designing a track for him to race at may be at a little bit distinct disadvantage for the rest of the field. I don't know.
Not to my knowledge, I think only the Xfinity Series has ever come here to Iowa of the three main series, and by that time, Rusty I don't think was in the sport anymore.
I think he may have planned a little bit too prematurely.
Come back for a one-off. So Matthew Robinson is going to get us back underway. He's going to have Jeremy Richmond on the top side here with him this time on the outside of row 2. So keep an eye on this, because we saw earlier that the teammates were trying to all time the restart together. Now being nose to tail, if the 99 gets going, the 98 may be able to follow him, but it looks like maybe Robinson didn't quite get the jump he was looking for. Richmond was ready to go. Robinson might have spun the tires a little bit there.
Yeah, that was a little bit more of a calm restart this time than as opposed to last. But looks like they're all trying to single file out, at least top 5 up.
You see again, some more drivers back there. I couldn't tell who exactly that was. Drifting up to the top side to try and let drivers by. I would have to wonder how difficult that actually is, because more than likely you're going to be on the top side of a 3-wide situation coming off the corner. We've already seen if you run too high off of turn 4 that wall is going to get you. I would think the same would be said for turn 2. Battle back here between some playoff contenders. Kyle Gartner and the 49 looking ahead to Corey Saucier, who has been able to now work his way up to 6th place. A lot of that due in part to the fact he has not been involved in either of our 2 cautions so far this evening. And just behind him is our winner from Daytona, the regular season finale, Christopher Lawrence. Lawrence, the guy that everybody's gunning for, if you will. 4th in the playoff standings right now, holding that final transfer spot to Homestead.
So I'll go back to that previous thought that I had before the giant pileup on the front straightaway, which is, I wonder if some of these guys may have adjusted their car more towards nighttime and kind of are just waiting for that sun to go down for the track conditions to change, or if they've planned it for more of the daytime and have small track bar and more wedge adjustments kind of planned to offset that.
Yeah, the thing that actually we were talking about as well, and if you could touch on that, that'd be good, is these drivers and their ability to choose where they want to end up putting the fans for the brakes here as this race progresses on.
Absolutely. You just kind of have to anticipate, because easily you can plan and kind of have the setup more geared towards the daytime, but as we turn towards the night, it may become more uncontrollable depending on how you have the car set up. Now, that obviously could change if how much heat's in the tires, or if the track holds more temperature than you were expecting maybe in testing. So that'll be something to see if someone may have missed the mark on their setup just a little bit.
Talked about James Cato and the run that he's been on. He's only made a limited number of starts this season, and there's no doubt in my mind with what he's been able to do in those limited number of starts, 2 trips to victory lane, that if he'd run the full season, we would more than likely be seeing him out there with the bright neon green playoff banner and spoiler. But we go back to the last 1.5-mile track during the regular season at Texas. He was dominant there. He ended up having a couple of issues at the wild card track of Daytona, but then went right back to work last week at Chicagoland Speedway and now leading this race. And it's interesting to see him out in front because, I talked to him last week after his win at Chicagoland, said, you're on a great momentum streak. What's your confidence level going into Iowa? And he said, not so good. I'm not exactly all that great when it comes to the short tracks, but he's doing a heck of a job right now trying to keep Matthew Robinson in his rearview mirror.
See, I take that as almost a 50-50 where, hey, the current playoff driver's like, oh man, that's great for you, but you're winning these races coming in so late to the season. But in the back of their minds, they have to be knowing, hey, for next season, that's someone who I've really got to look out for. That's someone I got to be scared about because he's dominating the last end of the season. That's not good.
I mentioned the fact that this track was fashioned after Richmond. These drivers were at Richmond earlier on this year, but Kyle Spees was the one that went to victory lane. He is no longer running in the series. If we go back to the only short track that a driver is still in the field here tonight that won at, that'd be your second place driver, Matthew Robinson, when he took the checker flag back at Bristol.
Out. Was it DJ Daniels around?
3-time winner, second incident he's been involved in today.
Oh, looks like he may have gotten some assistance from Monospa.
Jay Daniels, second in the playoff standings. Those 3 wins, those bonus points going a long ways for him to be able to be up there towards the top of the reformatted points after Daytona. And he was mired back in traffic. I think that he was one of the drivers that didn't use the faster pair, but had to get that right front damage fixed after the second caution, and you're definitely right. Definitely some assistance there into turn 3.
Now comes a difficult part where you got to look at the car here and really look and see, do I want to use a faster pair? Because obviously the rear spoiler is a bit crinkled, and that's a big concern there because you're already at a lack of downforce here. So losing that rear downforce may hurt the car more, maybe get a lot slicker out of these corners, which could help if you have a tighter setup at the moment. But that right front damage is really what I see killing this car here at the moment, because I'm looking at that splitter and I'm looking at that spoiler, and those are both bent.
And I have to wonder, too, you were talking about that they might have a limited number of set of tires here tonight. I mean, if you go into a spin, that is going to heat those things up big time. It's going to wear them down quite a bit. I don't know. Is your hand forced that you have to then come down and take the set of tires on, or are you willing to go out there, risk it, and hope that one of the tires don't blow before you make potentially a green flag pit stop?
I mean, it really depends on how aggressive you think you've been. Where, listen, if I'm up in the front of the field and I knew I came from the back, I'm immediately, hey, I've done something wrong. I probably need to take tires here because I've been burning these things up trying to get here. But for the guys who are back in the pack, maybe taking it a little bit easy, I'd be kind of scratching my head like, do I really need tires? I think I can stay out and last a little bit longer. It actually doesn't look like DJ Daniel's going to take the fast repair here.
So we'll keep our eyes on that as DJ Daniel trying to hold on to his final 4 spot. You just saw Ryan Sizemore go around. These past 2 cautions have now put him to only 1 lap down after early issues, and an update on another playoff contender. James Santoyo in the 79 actually had to teleport to pit road after his incident off of turn 4, bringing out the 2nd caution. He's back on the track, but he has fallen 3 laps down as a result. And this is a guy that already came in 15th out of the 16 playoff contenders. James Cato leads the way here as we are closing in on 40 laps complete here in the Blackgate Security 200. We're going to step aside for a quick commercial break, and we'll be back here for the restart at Iowa Speedway.
Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and Team. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you could only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine. Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and Team. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you could only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine.
Lights are out atop the pace car, which means we're going back green flag racing. Lap 40 will be put on the board when James Cato leads us back to the green. Working our 3rd caution of the night, which involved DJ Daniel in the 96. As you mentioned, Matt, he did not use the fast repair. He'll restart last car on the lead lap back in the 21st position. Maybe just kind of try to ride it out here for the time being before using that fast repair. As Cato on the top side, going to get us back under green. Into the restart zone he goes. He's going to lead Richmond, Saucier, McQuaid, and Roberts back to the green. That's your top 5.
I'll openly state, I don't really know if that's the right move for DJ Daniel. I mean, obviously we saw how effective that aero is on these cars and how big that damage is. And he did stay on pit road a little bit to try and remedy some of that damage at the moment. But I think it's really going to affect that car so aerodynamically here, where if they get a really extended green flag run, he has the risk of going a lap down. And there's a lot more to lose here than, hey, maybe one fast repair, but they're getting pretty dicey up here with, it looks like, David Montespa as well.
Ryan Phillips right there in the DoorDash sponsored 43, and he was trying to dash his way to the front there. Almost took it 3 wide with Christopher Lawrence and Kyle Gartner. Now tucks in line behind the 49 machine. That is a battle right now for 6th, 7th, and 8th. Up ahead, woo, that was close off of the corner. Patrick McQuaid almost brushing the wall, and TJ Roberts was almost there to capitalize.
Ooh, battles all over the track here at the moment. But the one I've been watching has to be with, looks like, my apologies, J.R. Miller, David Modespa, Zachary Kitzler, and looks like, I'm thinking that's the 7. Maybe the 7 of Josh Anderson. Actually, no, it is not. But they've really been battling back here, almost coming 3-4 wide off these corners. They've almost knocked down the fence a few times.
Kyle Gartner. I'll get to that thought in a minute there, as he definitely got the wall in the center of 1 and 2, keeps it going. But in the case of what you're talking about, that racing back there, is that racing in the form of desperation, or is that racing in the form of these drivers are just trying to find somewhere to put their car going into the corners and maybe don't have their car set up for being able to run that particular lane of the racetrack?
I think that's the biggest problem, is they don't know. So we're really just kind of bouncing all over. See a car up high there. Looks like someone's really Ryan Phillips is actually trying to high lane there. I don't know if it's going to be to much benefit here.
It didn't work right there. TJ Roberts was able to take the 6th position back away from him, and now Christopher Lawrence is going to move on by. Phillips going to cross him over here, though, going into turn 1.
Noticing Phillips really likes angling that car, using the back end.
Oh, gracious.
Oh, 9's in the 90.
And they all keep it straight somehow. The 90 is up there riding the wall through 1 and 2, but there's a lot of contact exchanged. I'm quite surprised that we did not have our 4th caution of the night right there.
That's the thing. I think Ryan may have gotten a little bit too bold there. But I really noticed out of some of these corners, he loved riding the top, and I noticed him starting to angle the rear end, angling the car through the corner, so he starts to slide a little bit on exit. That's great and all, but you really start to lose that rear end grip after about 10 laps. It looks like Josh Anderson caught the wall there on exit. He's starting to drop back now.
Now you saw that thing fishtailing down the back straightaway, kind of apropos. You were talking about losing rear end grip, and he definitely had no rear end grip there down the back straightaway. Is right now Anderson slotted in the 12th position, trying to hold off Ryan Phillips, who obviously lost a couple of positions there with the contact between himself and Christopher Lawrence. Lawrence has now dropped back to the 14th position. You may notice a couple of these drivers up here inside the top 10 right now, including James Jones. I mean, these are guys that you already documented, Matt, have used their fast repairs. So apparently they're not racing scared right now. They're trying to get themselves back up there to the front of the field, but still 50%, we're not even 50% of the way through this race. Is it a smart move? You've already used the fast repair. Should you just kind of be laying in the weeds, waiting things out?
See, here's the thing. You got the two mindsets there where, yes, the conservative mindset says, hey, I'm already at kind of a disadvantage here. There's 150 laps left. I've already used my fast repair. I need to kind of take it a bit easy. But there's always the kind of concerned mind here. It's, listen, there's no guaranteed cautions in this series. I mean, listen, I got a race. So that's kind of coming into the back of the mind of some of these drivers who already have used the fast repairs of, listen, I can't just keep hanging around here. I got to go. Corey Saucier, he's driven up 19 positions all the way from 22nd all the way to 3rd. That's kind of scary to think about if you're the leader of saying, hey, this guy came from all the way from the back of the pack, and he started to challenge.
I'd almost been some contact there between James Cato and Jeremy Richmond. Cato definitely had to lift going into turn 1 a lot more than he wanted to. That dropped him back almost to 3 wide with Matthew Robinson and Corey Saucier. Saucier's going to back out of that, as now you're going to have a breakaway of 5 machines. Add Patrick McQuaid to the tail end of that. And two, we have to hit home the fact that being a short track, obviously you're going to be in a lot more traffic if you're towards the rear of the field, so your lap times are not going to be the same as the leaders out at the front in that clean air. And there is every chance, as you mentioned, with not knowing if a caution could come out and save you, that you could find yourself with the race leader on your back bumper trying to put you a lap down.
Well, I'll give you the cautionary tale of Angel Santiago. Angel Santiago, he's already used his fast repair. He got involved in that incident with the 43. That puts him all the way back in the pack. Now he doesn't have a fast repair, and he has damage on the car, both on the right side and the hood. So, I mean, you really got to think, I mean, that's kind of the cautionary tale for both, but I mean, look at DJ Daniel. I mean, he's kind of one of those injured cars here at the moment. He's not doing too badly, but I mean, look at how much this pack ahead is really separating themselves from him. And after a while, that really starts putting a bit of concern in my head of, uh-oh, if a caution doesn't come out, I'm really in a bad spot.
Just to give you an idea of how important it is to be that car out in front, not around traffic. Now, last time by, Matthew Robinson ran a 24-1. Everybody else behind him were running in the 24-7s. So I don't think it's necessarily as much clean air. I know that plays a part into it, but I think it's also the fact that you're able to choose the optimal line that you want to run with nobody to hinder you.
Yeah, and that's the thing of realistically having that ability to run whatever line you want, whatever makes you comfortable, that's great. I mean, Again, we're looking at Robertson, and Robertson pulls out almost 2 seconds. But, I mean, look at this kind of pack of cars with Richmond, Cato, and also Saucier. I mean, they're all kind of battling for that same spot, and neither one of them can make a pass. So it's kind of a indication of, well, maybe my setup isn't good enough on different lanes, or the practice with that I plan with is kind of being taken up by 2 other cars here at the moment.
Another driver that snuck up into the top 10 there. How about the 64 of Jordan Stencil? 7 points out of the final 4. He is 9th in the overall standings. Correction, 10th in the overall standings of the playoff drivers coming into this race. And you correct me if I'm wrong, it looks like Zachary Wood still has that front end damage that he received from earlier on when he and James Jones got together, and somehow that car is still managing to stay up here inside of the top 10 right now, trying to hold off J.R. Miller for 9th.
Correct, and he hasn't used a fast repair yet either. So it's kind of surprising to see how much damage is on the front of that car and seeing how fast he is at the moment. But I'm kind of guessing that he's kind of having at least a little bit of a snowplow issue rather than kind of a jet ski at the back. He's probably having a tougher time into the corners and kind of coming out of the corners than he usually would. But it still has straight line speed, which is very shocking.
That's going to make you wonder just how fast that car is going to be if at some point later on this race he does use that fast repair allotted to these drivers, as we are about to have ourselves a exchange for second place. We actually just did. James Cato getting around Jeremy Richmond. Corey Saucier looking on there in third. This is not the battle for the lead. This is the battle for second, taking place about 3.5 seconds behind Matthew Robinson, who is just waving goodbye. And I think he stopped waving goodbye because I don't think they'd see his hand anymore.
I mean, kind of, this is exactly what Robinson needs, is to build himself a little bit more of a cushion on that 4th place spot. He came into this race only 6 pretty much points ahead of that spot, and that's not a really comforting place to be. So if he can put any more distance on Lawrence here, and obviously that will probably change at the end of this race, but if he can put any more distance on that 4th place spot, he will be in a much happier mood going to Talladega.
Robinson, 3-time winner, started off the season with a bang, winning at Daytona, followed it up a few weeks later with back-to-back wins at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and then, of course, the short track of Bristol, which made him a favorite coming into this short track at Iowa Speedway. He currently now holds 4 seconds over James Cato, Jeremy Richmond, Patrick McQuaid, and Corey Saucier, completing the top 5. Good run there for Patrick McQuaid. Should give him a bit of a shout out there. I mentioned it's only his 2nd start of the season. He didn't exactly have the debut he was looking for last week at Chicagoland, but he's been a mainstay up inside of the top 5 ever since we started this thing.
Absolutely. And I've just noticed Josh Anderson's really having a lot of problems. Almost sends it into the back of TJ Roberts. He's in the wall now.
Going to drop a couple of positions from 11th now back to 13th place. Finds a little safe area there in front of Zachary Kitzler. If you're looking for that 25, he is running a different paint scheme this week. We're used to the white, black, and pink of his T-Mobile Ford, but he's got jegs on the car, the yellow, black, and white on his machine this week. And there you see DJ Daniel in the 96. He's been able to work his way up to 15th. Christopher Lawrence, remember we saw him have that near moment there, the contact between him and Ryan Phillips? That has seemed to affect him in a way that is not good. It has dropped him all the way back to 16th, and he has made no forward progress since then.
And that's kind of the thing. I mean, looking around the car, it doesn't seem like there's that much damage, but if you start looking at in-depth, he definitely kind of hit the front end. He hit both the right side, kind of knocked down the quarter panel as well, and he's got damage on the spoiler, so that's not really a good combination. And this is really good to kind of pull from. I mean, look at DJ Daniel here. He's kind of has similar damage here and is running about the same speed and around the same position. So that's realistically what it does to your car. Is it slows you down by about half a second, give or take.
Right now, DJ Daniel is battling with a 79 of James Santoyo. Now, that is not for position. Santoyo is 3 laps down, and I believe Santoyo has actually used a fast repair after he had his incident off of turn 4 at caution number 2. And so that gives you an idea of just how much DJ Daniel is struggling with this race car. The fact that a driver 3 laps down who is at 100% is still able to keep in touch with him.
Now, I have to say, I mean, I'm looking at Ryan Phillips here, and he's not our normal case situation here of, why he's going, at least kind of dropping back to the field. But there is some kind of, same things that you can kind of pull off it, where he does have spoiler damage, he does have a little bit of right rear damage, and that has to be affecting the car's downforce in a bit of a way. But also look at his driving style a little bit here. He really likes to accelerate and kind of slide these cars out of the corner, which is fine when you have new tires and you're on short runs. But as you start to go into a longer run, you really start to burn up that right rear grip. And once you start burning through that right rear grip, the next logical place is, hey, the right front's going to start churning up. When that right front churns up, now the car doesn't want to turn at all.
See, we're riding on board here with Phillips, exactly what you're describing, letting that back end hang out and counter steering it off of the corner just a least little bit to get the nose pointed onto the straightaway. Right now, Phillips just getting around TJ Roberts for the 10th position. Now, we talked about lap traffic. We've already hit some. Christopher Lawrence has just hit pit lane, as has Josh Anderson. Here at Iowa, you come to pit road. Depending on where you are in the field, you're guaranteed to lose at least 2 laps, maybe 3 if you're running outside of the top 15.
Well, that really puts strategy at an all-time high where you got to look here. And listen, if you think there's going to be a caution coming out, you have to really run to the end of your cycle. But if you're really banking on, hey, there's not going to be a caution, I really want this undercut, you have to come down quickly and hope that you can get off and no cautions come out where you're going to lose 2 laps and you're going to be trapped at least 1 down.
Regularly scheduled stop for Lawrence. Looks like the reason for Anderson pitting much more sinister is, is that Brock Silvati there with almost an issue off of turn 4? These guys, Hubka, Silvati, they're trying to remain on the lead lap. You've got right now the driver who I believe would be in the free pass position, Ryan Sizemore, there in the 8 machine as well. As another driver just hit pit lane, Zachary Kitzler in the 25, who I believe overshot his pit stall.
Looks like he did overshoot it just a little bit, had to back right back into it. And again, that's just time that you can't afford to lose because that's about 2 to 3 laps down. And yes, you will get those 2 laps back when you kind of do your cycle, but you could be right on the cusp of losing another lap.
Is going to go a lap down there in the 5 machine. Brock Silvati looks to driver's left and sees his teammate blow on by him. Next driver for the 9 to have to deal with that is on the lead lap would be the 88 of Noah Owens, and he's only about maybe a third of the straightaway ahead. He will have to deal first with Ryan Sizemore in the 8 before he gets up to Owens.
And here's the thing, this is really when you as a leader, you're having the most trouble. Because again, the guys who are off the pace a little bit, who are back here, they want to be competitive, they want to be fast, and they're going to be running your preferred lanes. And that's obviously the fast lane. But the biggest issue doesn't come from them running the lane, since it's really the leader's responsibility to get around them. The biggest issue is when you have them get off of their lane. Since, hey, if you're making them run a lane that they haven't run in the last, 50 laps or so, that can really throw them off. And again, maybe their car just can't hold that bottom lane like they're used to. Hey, I want the top lane. Well, I don't know if my car's going to stick down here on the bottom. And that's exactly what we're seeing at a Sizemore now.
Yeah, he's tried to hold the bottom there. Pushes up into Noah Owens. They are going to keep it together. Those are teammates there, I believe, as well, in the 8 and the 88.
That's the thing. That's what you don't want to happen. That slows you down. The 88 hits the wall. He's dropping back.
That car just never turned going into the corner, as he's going to knock down turn 1 wall and lose a couple of spots for his trouble. Brock Silvati, actually, this is for position for the first car, 1 lap down, should we get a yellow flag. And look at here. Here's the difference of old tires to new tires. Christopher Lawrence, look at the closing rate between himself and the 99. Lawrence right now 2 laps down, trying to get one of those laps back, and almost got in the back bumper of the leader.
And here comes the next tough part for the leader of, hey, you're not the fastest car on track anymore, and you have to kind of give these lap cars who do have fresh tires a little bit of room. And again, these lap cars, they're seeing you like, all right, I've got to pass him here. I got to start getting my laps back. And they're going to grow a little bit impatient. And that's where we're going to see a lot of these incidents kind of start up from after the pit stops of, hey, there's a lap car on, let's say, 30, 70 lap old tires here. And you got a fresh car, but just got new tires. He's ready to start blazing through the field and get the only thing in his path.
You just saw it there, the aftermath of Brock Silvati trying to get onto pit road. Kyle Gartner also hits pit lane. Silvati spinning it out, nosing it into the inside walls. That's going to be a lot more damage that he's going to have to get repaired. Was already running off the lead lap before his spin.
And that's not what you really want. I mean, that kind of adds salt to the wound. Since, again, you really need a good pit stop to kind of last you here.
Silvati utilized Daytona after some consistent runs prior to be able to point his way into the playoffs. Came into this race, I believe it was 9th in the playoff standings, only 6 points out, and looks like here tonight Iowa is not going to play to his benefit. I believe just seen him come off pit road there. He is going to be added to the list of drivers that has used a faster pair, still not even halfway through this race.
Man, that pit road is just so treacherous. You have to turn so far right or so far left just to get on, and that pit wall kind of blocks the sharp entrance in. But I've got to really wonder if DJ Daniel's kind of regretting his decision now, because, I mean, looking at Robinson's passing start-finish line now, and DJ Daniel's kind of coming out of turn 2 at the moment. And even, he's going to stay on the lead lap, I bet. I mean, obviously after he gets his laps back, under a pit stop and whatnot. But I really wonder if he's going to be regretting being that far down the hole, because, again, cautions are not guaranteed, and you can easily kind of lose out here.
Chris Hupka, David Modespa on pit road. We just saw Jeremy Richmond and Corey Saucier pitting from inside of the top 5. Richmond almost looping it around there. I gotta wonder if the progressive banking, would that have any part into the difficulty these drivers are having getting onto pit road? Because if we kind of consider Richmond, there's not a whole lot of banking there, and usually drivers utilize the apron through the middle of 3 and 4 anyway, so you're already down in the flat. Same for a track like Martinsville, but here, like we see Matthew Robinson coming to pit road, it's almost directly out of turn 4 that you're coming off that progressive banking onto the flat apron and the flat pit road.
So, I mean, the flat pit road, obviously you're relying on that banking just a little bit, and you have to slow down at least a little bit more than you're comfortable with. I mean, Robinson had to slow down to almost all the way to 90 miles an hour, and that really puts a big task on the guys behind him, trying to make sure they don't run him over. But also, when you're coming on the pit road, if you're watching the onboard of some of these cars that are coming in, they have to avoid that big white pit wall that almost kind of juts into the pit lane, and then drive around it, which does affect them just a little bit. I mean, you're looking for that entrance, and if you're seeing a wall, you're wondering, hey, where's my entrance here?
Well, from wrecked over in turn 1 in the beginning stages of this race to now out in front, James Jones in the 10 machine showing the way. And based off of when all these lead lap cars came to pit lane, most of our race leaders came to pit lane, it was somewhere in the lap 80 vicinity. Now, granted, most of these drivers were able to also utilize the pacing laps of 3 cautions, so we don't exactly know what the fuel window is for these drivers, but projected on those 81 laps, I mean, James Jones could probably stay out there for another 10 laps at least before he'd have to come down.
It's debatable if he would want to, though, because, I mean, just looking at the times with new tires versus old tires, I mean, new tires are almost pulling 24 ones, and James C. Jones, his last lap would be, as I'm waiting for him to cross the line, it's that slow, 25.4, 25.5 almost. I mean, you're losing over a second in time to these new cars.
DJ Roberts on pit lane. Right now, 6 drivers left out on the racetrack to complete this cycle. All 6 of them are playoff contenders. Jones leads the way, Stenzel in second, Zachary Woods in third, then DJ Daniel, Angel Santiago, and J.R. Miller. We're still waiting for those drivers to come down pit lane. We're expecting at least the 10 and the 90 to pit in the next 10 to 15 laps, maybe a little bit longer, maybe 20 to 25 laps before the 64, 96, 78, and 60 will be hitting pit lane. Well, actually, correction on that, because Zachary Woods, well, he tried to get onto pit lane, but apparently overshot it. No caution will come out, as he's going to have to limp that machine back around again before coming to pit road.
You know, I'm kind of looking here, and obviously what Jones really wants here, well, as he pits now, but what Jordan Sensel's kind of banking on here is he's hoping for a caution. He's hoping for something to really kind of save him, trap a lot of these guys a lap down, and kind of give him the choice to, hey, he can come in and pit, doesn't lose a lap, really gets a great jump. He'd be all the way up to about 11th, 12th.
One driver who did not have a good pit stop was Corey Saucier. He was up in the top 5 when the pit stops began. He's lost spots to drivers like Kyle Gartner, Christopher Lawrence, who pitted long after he did. About 17 seconds he spent on pit road, so a lot of pressure on the pit crews here as well to keep your driver in contention for this victory. And we keep saying there's a long ways to go, but there's going to get to a point in this race where we're not going to be saying that anymore. It's going to be getting down to the nitty-gritty and not enough laps to be able to mount a comeback.
That's the thing. You got to kind of look here and see, who's making their moves. Now, again, I know I mentioned him earlier, and I'll go ahead and I'll mention him again. I mean, DJ Daniel kind of looks like he's taken at least a little bit of advantage here, but I notice he hasn't used the fast repair at all. Actually, he hasn't pit yet.
Yeah, he hasn't pit yet, which actually has to make me wonder. I mean, he will probably be on pit road, projected maybe around the halfway point. So you have to wonder if maybe he would utilize the fast repair there under a green flag pit stop for the second half of this race. Stenzel continues to show the way, but right now, the battle that would eventually be for the race lead has about 5.5 second separation between it. Robinson right now running in 5th. James Cato currently running in the 6th position. It's another 5 seconds back to Corey Saucier, who has his hands full with Kyle Gartner. So this could be the eventual battle for third place.
Notice some of these guys who have come in, I mean, they're kind of used up their tires a bit. Robinson's really kind of drove his way back from being a few laps down to now being on the lead lap, just kind of racing his way back up the stencil.
Not sure what happened with Patrick McQuaid. We were talking about the great run he was having, and his pit stop was really good, 14 and a half seconds, but he spent nearly a minute on pit road. Now, I didn't see him have an issue getting onto pit lane, but we've seen a number of drivers slipping and sliding around, missing pit road, spinning coming onto pit road, so I almost wonder if the same thing might have happened to him. He now is all the way back 17th, one lap down.
I'm taking a look now, but it may have been a penalty, possibly. I don't feel it would have been if his box time was only 14 seconds, so... Oh, I'm seeing it here. It actually looks like he overshot his pit box twice.
Wow.
He overshot his pit box by about 2 or 3 boxes, backed up a little bit, mistook what pit box was his, then had to back up once more to get himself back in the pit stall.
Boy, that is huge. That is a tough break
Well,
there.
actually, he missed it 3 times. That's huge.
We've had another incident here. It didn't bring out a caution, but I'm noticing that the 60 of Zachary Woods has sustained even more damage on his machine. We know that he missed pit road earlier on, and now the whole front end of that car is gone. I'm wondering if maybe he looped it onto pit road, hit that inside wall, so it has not been a good night for him.
What it sounded like more or less was it sounded like Jeremy Richmond was just kind of getting a little bit impatient. I mean, I heard him over the radio a few laps ago saying, "Man, I mean, just kind of get out of my way," and it sounds like Woods just didn't get out of his way, and Richmond was tired of waiting.
Richmond is now the last car on the lead lap, just ahead of Matthew Robinson there, who has been able to drive his way back up to the lead, and that is with about 5 or 6 drivers that haven't even come to pit road. That car is that fast. He was able to get his lap back hard way and be able to make his way around this short track, back up through the top 5 and back up to the point. It is now going to be about 5 seconds back to his nearest competitor, James Cato, as we're still waiting for second and third Stencil and Angel Santiago to come to pit lane. Want to give a quick opportunity here to shout out some of the BackFire sim racing sponsors, including JKR Motorsports, Auto Ventures LLC based in Hudsonville, Michigan, JR's Mobile Detailing, as well as Sim Shots. Like them on Facebook. We can find awesome photos for cheap prices. So thank you to all the sponsors here for BackFire, as we are now reaching the halfway point of this race. So I want to take the opportunity to see if the track conditions have changed as we have now turned on the lights here at Iowa. It was about 81 degrees when we started this race. It's now about 82 degrees. So obviously the weather has not played a part into the temperature change of this track, and the fact that we've been able to go into this long green flag run has probably managed to keep this track at a constant temperature.
Yeah, and that's the thing where there's constant wear on this track, and that makes me wonder how many people kind of missed their setups here because they expected the track to be a lot cooler at this time. Just with so many cars going around here, it's helped kind of keep the track temp in. Someone's wrecking in front of the leader. That's 25. He saves it.
Whew. That was a close call. Nearly got the last car on the lead lap, Richmond. Almost got the race leader, Matthew Robinson.
That's dangerous. That's openly dangerous.
Absolutely.
You know, honestly, I'm kind of wondering why Matthew Robinson doesn't have a freaky or a Jimmy John sponsor on the car. That thing is freaky fast.
It definitely is. I mean, he is laying down lap times there, head and shoulders above the rest of his competition. That last time by, he ran a little slower, obviously, because he was having to lift for the near-wrecking 25 ahead of him, but he has been consistently at least a tenth and a half faster than James Cato. And remember, Robinson came to pit road 1 lap sooner than Cato did, so you would think that on the long run, advantage would go to the 3, but no, that's not been the case. Ever since Robinson got out to the front, he has just put himself in a different zip code to the rest of the field.
Listen, I can't fault the hustle. That is great. But obviously we saw why the 98 the 98 of Jeremy Richmond was trying to get away from Zachary Woods so fast. I mean, he saw the leader coming, but he just couldn't get away fast enough.
And he will now get put 1 lap down. A couple of drivers that had stayed out hoping for the caution will not get it. Jordan Stencil and J.R. Miller, playoff contenders, now hit pit lane, and that should complete the cycle of green flag pit stops here, as we are now at the halfway point of Blackgate Security 200. Robinson leads James Cato by 3.5 seconds. Corey Saucier's up to third. Kyle Gartner now in fourth. And James Jones right now holding down the 5th position. That car is fast despite the early issues that he had in the first 20 laps of this race. Ooh, we had a car out of shape there coming off pit road. I think that was the 64 of Stencil. I don't know if he was dealing with some wheel spin on pit road exit or not. But right now, we only have 7 drivers on the lead lap. Ryan Phillips and Christopher Lawrence, the last of those. Right now, the rest of the top 10 lap down cars, Jeremy Richmond, TJ Roberts, and David Modespa. That strategy for a number of drivers staying out did not work to their benefit. J.R. Miller is now 17th, 2 laps down. Jordan Stencil, 2 laps down in 20th. And Zachary Woods right now is 16th, 2 laps down. And it's going to be really difficult for drivers here now in the second half of this race, as we've gone into a pretty long green flag run, to be able to get those laps back. The likelihood of enough cautions coming out for them to be able to get enough laps to get back into contention starting to get slim to none. And Christopher Lawrence now 7th place, under fire from Matthew Robinson. Trying to put him a lap down and leave only 6 drivers on the lead lap. And you know, obviously we know that Matthew Robinson's good at the short tracks. He proved it back at Bristol, but we did not really see as dominating performance there as we've seen out of him tonight at Iowa.
But that's really kind of shown how many of these drivers, they had different strategies in mind. They kind of thought about, with how many cautions that came out in that first opening session, they really kind of thought that, hey, this would be a kind of a caution-filled race, and they could plan their races around it. And it's kind of turned into, hey, this long green flag run that they just weren't prepared for, we weren't expecting.
Well, Robinson, it's interesting too, because you look right now, obviously DJ Daniel has had some struggles here tonight, but we saw the battle that Jeremy Richmond and Matthew Robinson were putting up against each other, with Robinson trying to stay on the lead lap. Those are both teammates out of JKR Motorsports, but obviously, you know, there's some information that gets bounced off of teammate to teammate, but there are opportunities as well where you might want to hold something back from your teammate to make sure that you're going to be the top gun of your team. And we're obviously seeing that with the pace being set by Matthew Robinson. Richmond, DJ Daniel, as well as Brock Salvati, we've just not seen them have the same kind of speed as the 99.
Ben, Jeremy Richmond just kind of pulled off a quick pass of Christopher Lawrence, but you kind of bring up a point with that where teams may be kind of holding some stuff back. That's not always the case. It always could be, hey, maybe Matthew Robinson's been the one who built this setup, who kind of worked on it from start to finish. They may have a better knowledge of it in and out, but also it's adjusting, being able to adjust later in the race of, listen, this car runs better at night, but it requires these adjustments in the daytime to be quick. And that's kind of that knowledge of, hey, when you see a problem going wrong, or that you notice something's not working with the car, as Christopher Lawrence really has kind of destroyed the right front tire in that car. It is not turning at all. But just having that ability to adjust on the fly, it makes your race so much better, and it gives you so much better performance later down the run.
Right now, Richmond, as you mentioned, with that pass on Lawrence, he's now up in the free pass position once again in 7th place. And the next driver that Matthew Robinson would encounter on the lead lap would be Ryan Phillips, and he's only about 5 seconds away. I think you just saw the hood of his 43 going into turn 3. It's interesting, too, when you look at the situation these drivers have going into these playoffs, with the fact that there's no winning you're in situation. It's basically a round of 16 to a round of 4 in the season finale, so you are eliminating the round of 12 and the round of 8. And you put a super speedway there right in the middle. You look at some of these guys, Robinson and Daniel, they came into the playoffs in the 2 of the final 4 positions. You've got Salvati and Richmond that are there trying to point their way into the final 4. I have to wonder what teammate strategy is going to be like next week. Is it going to be a case of you help me, I help you, so that way we can kind of settle it out of who of us among us, or maybe both of us are going to get into that final 4 after Kentucky? Is it every man for himself? It really throws a big monkey wrench into strategy to put a super speedway in the playoffs with only 4 spots available in 2 weeks' time.
Seth, I think we've both been in this kind of situation before, and it's kind of that thing of, let's now help you up until a certain point, but after that certain point, you're on your own. I can only do so much.
There's Ryan Phillips, and you see that car just coming out of turn 2 is the race leader, Matthew Robinson. 88 laps to go. It's our longest green flag run of the evening so far, as we worked a couple of early cautions, 3 of them in total. Number of your playoff contenders involved, and several of those playoff contenders have not been able to mount a comeback. There is one of them, Chris Hubka, in the 5. He had to use a faster pair early, finds himself 2 laps down in 14th. Got J.R. Miller back in 15th, Brock Stovati 16th, Jordan Stencil 17th, Zachary Woods there in 18th. You've even got Noah Owens and James Santoyo. They are not going to be leaving Iowa in the position they want to be heading into Talladega. 21st and 22nd right now for those two on the grid.
I'll go ahead and I'll kind of leave the door open where it's not all, kind of gloom and doom for all these drivers. There is still a chance that a caution will come out and kind of save some of them. But as I'm kind of looking, if you're all the way back, like, hey, DJ Daniel here at the moment, he's the next guy to be kind of 2 laps down here. And that would immediately kind of ring in my head, we've missed the mark here. We've done something wrong.
Right now, as we mentioned, Jeremy Richmond's in the lucky dog position, but if you look from J.R. Miller, who's trying to unlap himself and get himself to -1, but we'll count him for the time being of the drivers 2 laps down, that would be from 14th down to 21st. I'm seeing a range of drivers out there on 14 laps on their tires, up to 40 laps on their tires. So let's say a caution comes out, Matthew Robinson, the rest of your race leaders come down pit road. Is it worth the gamble to take the wave around, try and get at least one of those 2 laps back, just in case you end up having a couple more late race cautions?
Here's the thing, if I'm 1 lap down, I'd take the gamble. It's more or less, I'd rather put myself in a situation where it's a possibility than, all right, I don't feel safe, let me go get new tires, and hey, a caution comes out in 2 laps, and it's, well, I just wasted my whole opportunity because the leader's not coming back in. I can't get a wave around. Where it's, listen, even if I'm 2 or 3 laps down, I'd still try it. Because, hey, it's still something that can get me in contention. If I'm 2 laps down, hey, it gets me back to 1 lap down. All I got to do is hope and pray that everyone in front of me came down, took the wave around, and that I'm the only guy lapped down, so when a caution comes out, hey, I'm lucky dog. If I'm 3 laps down, that's when it gets a little bit more complex.
This has to be the comeback of the race here. 4th place running James Jones. You saw there on that driver info, the lowest he's run today, 22nd. That is next to last, and that's because he was involved in an early caution. Was one of the first drivers to actually have to use the faster pair. Now, he's been off pit sequence, but he's been able to work his way up to the 4th position right now, in line for a top 5 run with a car that was basically wrecked in the first 20 laps of this race.
I got to respect the hustle. Again, he has been working at it. That's kind of the epitome of the never say die attitude. Listen, he got involved in an accident. I think he was even involved in that second incident. He still came back.
And you're seeing here a bit of a wad up of drivers. I believe that's the 79 of Santoyo on the top. DJ Daniel there in the 96. The car that was to the inside of the 97 was the 49 Kyle Gartner up inside the top 5, and behind them David Monospaw in the 1. That's something too. We're talking about the possibility of a late race caution. A big contributor to that could very well be the fact that a lot of these drivers are completely off sequence of each other. You got fresh tires versus old tires, as much as maybe 30-40 laps difference between the Goodyears on one driver and another. And we saw early on in this race, drivers with different braking zones going into the corner, so the closing rate can be very, very quick. That could end up being a contributing factor if we end up having ourselves a late race caution.
Here's another thing you really got to take into consideration is how hard are you driving the car? Again, you can only have 15 laps on the tires, but those things can be toasted by someone who has been saving tires and knows how to kind of conserve their car a little bit. They can have 35 lap old tires, and those things will be leagues better than what you have at the moment.
So as mentioned, these drivers all, whoa, Ryan Phillips with a bit of a slide there off of turn 2, and I think he's actually might be coming to pit road.
Yeah, I think his hand may have been forced in that one. He said, I don't know if I'm going to do that again, so might as well come down, might as well just kind of kick off the second round of pit stops.
That kind of answered my question there too, because I was kind of wondering when these drivers were going to have to pit. As mentioned, they went 81 laps before coming to pit road. Most of your race leaders did, but albeit they had about 16 laps of caution to be able to save a little bit of fuel, and they pitted just around the halfway point, so no possible way they were going to be able to make it to the conclusion, and was wondering just how far these guys could go. I guess the window's open to make it the rest of the way, as several other drivers have hit pit road.
It looks like Patrick McQuaid, the muffler man, decides to come in. He's going to take a second shot of that pit stop there.
Just letting you guys know, he's been waiting and waiting to use the nickname. DJ
Listen.
Daniel on pit road as well in the 96.
You don't simply put the muffler man on the car and not expect to get called it.
Matthew Robinson, he's had his hands full here with JR Miller. Got around him a couple of laps ago to get back at least one of his 2 laps. Robinson riding in his tire tracks, and touch on this because I've been noticing this and I'm not exactly sure what to make of it. I've been watching a number of these drivers go into the corner, especially over in turn 1. It's almost like the car rattles. Is there like some bumps over there that they're hitting, or what is that that's upsetting the car that much?
There could be some bumps entering the corner, but it also could be maybe a little bit of wheel hop. I don't know, but it could be a variety of things, from bumps to maybe they overused the right front tire to, again, maybe have the brake bias set wrong, just getting a little bit of wheel hop going into the corner.
I've seen a number of drivers dealing with that, including second place running James Cato. He had that issue I saw back around the halfway point of this race. Just an update too, I don't know if because the 78 is battling hard with the 99, if that's contributing to this, but remember it was about 5 seconds between Robinson and James Cato after they both made their green flag pit stop. It's now been closed down to 3.5 seconds, so Cato might be doing a little bit better with the lap traffic, with the slower traffic, than race leader Matthew Robinson is.
It could be that he was just kind of waiting until later in the race for his car maybe to come to him. Again, maybe some of these guys could have set up for late conditions where they were kind of expecting this sundown kind of temperatures kind of going down a little bit. Maybe they were looking for that. But also could have been maybe he was just lying in wait saying, hey, I don't want to burn up my stuff. I don't want to get in an instant that early. So just slowly start working his way back up.
James Jones, Brock Silvati.
Oh, caution's out.
And it's Ryan Phillips, the 43 over in turn 3.
Oh.
And he had just been on pit road.
Oh, Modespa. Yikes.
Almost a follow-up wreck there as the 43 was trying to get the thing turned around, and could that have possibly been due to going out there on slicks? Remember, the 43 had just hit pit road about 4 laps ago. Oh no, he got a little bit of help here, battling with the lap machine of Zachary Kinsler in the 25.
I've been hearing a lot of 25 the last few laps of a few drivers just kind of being upset, but I don't know if that was more or less kind of the same incident that happened earlier where Phillips kind of slid up in front of the 90 of Santiago.
It's almost as if 25 of Kinsler didn't expect that Phillips was going to ride it up the track the way he did. We're going to go on board with the 25. I'm not necessarily certain there was contact there.
I mean, did Santiago expect the 43 to come in front of him either?
Nope, probably not. Let's see if there was contact. You're on board with the 25. Oh, yep, there was. A little bit of contact there in the left rear quarter panel. I thought for a brief moment there that maybe Phillips had just sent it into the corner too hard and the back end stepped out on him, but there definitely was some contact there, and I called it. You know, the difference in tires leading to a wreck, and that definitely was a major contributor to that wreck right there.
I mean, Phillips did a really good job. I mean, here's the thing. He kept it off the wall. He started going down the track, but he saw Sizemore coming, so he hooks it back right, spins it right back to the middle of the track, just holds it there. He did a really smart move. Now, what Modespa is doing, I'm a little bit confused about, because Modespa decided to drift into another instant. I'm a little confused if he just didn't see him, or didn't expect him to start pulling down.
Yeah, I think it was the case of not expecting him to pull down, to be honest. Probably was expecting he would wait till all oncoming traffic was clear, and it kind of took him by surprise. And we just cut back, unfortunately, a little too late. There was a heck of a battle off of pit road between James Cato and Matthew Robinson, and Cato got him by maybe a third of the car length. That number 1 pit stall was starting on the pole, paying dividends for James Cato late in this race.
Well, I mean, just look at the lane time and the box time versus Cato. I mean, easily Cato is 3 seconds quicker on pit lane, and then also about 2.5 seconds faster in the box. I mean, obviously, there's something up.
And Jeremy Richmond, with this caution coming out, will be back on the lead lap, leaving us with 7 drivers that will be on the lead lap here, I do believe, when we go back green. I think we got a couple of drivers that are going to be electing to take the wave around. TJ Roberts in the 11, Angel Santiago in the 90. Those drivers have 30-plus laps on their tires, but taking the wave around would put them on the lead lap with the rest of the top 5.
Interesting. I'm seeing some strategies here. I kind of like the idea.
I do too, because, okay, so, okay, here's the one thing I'm a little bit concerned about. If you don't get a caution, they're still going to have to pit. Because I was going to say, if they didn't have to pit, then more than likely the furthest you're going to finish, if you're able to keep up at least a decent pace, is 7th place. But, based on the fact that you probably can't make it on fuel, you're basically gambling on the fact that there's going to be a caution coming out somewhere in the next 20 to 30 laps.
My whole thing is it's risk versus reward. I'm looking here and saying, listen, if I have to come in about, let's say, 10, 20 laps because a caution didn't come out, well, then I have 10, 20 laps fresher tires than everyone else in the field. I could probably get myself back maybe 1 lap down in a reasonable spot. And hey, if this all does work out, hey, I'm back in the lead lap. I can quickly pit, get some new tires, I'm good to go. It's not an ideal situation, but it's kind of the gamble you have to play to make sure that you're going to have a shot at this.
Especially with the fact of we ended up having that 1 round of green flag pit stops. Robinson has been setting a tremendous pace, and right now, if those two didn't take the wave around, we'd be talking about only 5 drivers on the lead lap. Because right now, 8th on down through 12th are 1 lap down. 13th to 18th are 2 laps down. Then you've got a number of drivers that are 3 or 4 laps down. One of them was going to document before we had the Ryan Phillips spin. Christopher Lawrence has now fallen 3 laps down. Long, lengthy stay on pit road when he came down under green flag conditions. And more importantly, he was the cut line driver, 4th in the playoff standings. Now, granted, he does have a super speedway win at Daytona under his belt. We're going to a super speedway track next week, but certainly not what he was looking forward to having for a scenario coming into this race as that cut line driver.
I mean, there's a mad dash to back of the pack trying to get everyone lined up in the correct place.
They'll be able to do that. A lot of drivers trying to figure out where they're at. Several drivers 1, 2, 3, 4 laps down. The only driver that right now is more than 4 laps down is Josh Anderson. He just now returned back to the racetrack, 69 laps down in that 7 machine. I'm not necessarily certain if it was all to get damage repaired or not, but he spent nearly a half hour in his pit stall. He's still running. All 23 cars are still running in this race, which is the incredible thing based off of a lot of the carnage we saw in the early stages.
It looks like Anderson probably had a new engine dropped in that car, but hey, props to him for still staying out. Look at that inside lane from 8th place back.
Drivers
There's a lot of people lined up.
All lined up single file since they are off the lead lap. Should make things very interesting here for this
Looks
restart.
like they've delayed caution. They've delayed the restart.
They're going to try and get the scoring correct here. James Cato. This is interesting. Cato's electing the inside line as the pace car. Taking the scenic route, I see.
There's actually a jump in the middle of pit road where we just jumped over and hopped back onto the track.
Oh, I thought there was a revolving door maybe through the pit lane wall or something.
It's a toll route.
There you go. It's 25 cents to the Iowa Speedway. But Cato's choosing the inside line here. We've seen, at least in the early restarts, that everybody that was the race leader wanted the outside line. Check on the track temperature here, and it's still at 80 degrees, so there's really been absolutely no change. A fluctuation of maybe 2 degrees here from the start till now. Would it be maybe adjustments that have been made on the 3 that he feels more comfortable on the inside line for this restart now? I don't know.
I think, hey, if you got new tires and going into that run down in the turn 1 on the race restart, I mean, obviously, you're going to full throttle into 1, just trying to get as much grip as possible. And, hey, I think maybe he thinks that's the advantage here.
Robinson looked like he timed that restart perfectly. He went the exact moment that James Cato did. Cato, however, is going to get the advantage off the corner, and I'm almost wondering if maybe that might have been the case of the 9 jumping a little bit, giving the spot back to the 3. I'm not 100% certain, because it just seemed like he got up there to the start-finish line a lot quicker than the 3 car, but you talk about that dogfight is going on back there around the 78 of J.R. Miller and company.
Ay. But again, everyone's still kind of single file back there, and that's what you got to worry about. Here's the thing, if I'm all the way back at the end of that kind of long line, I'd be wondering, hey, I've got to kind of quickly make my charge, at least on the outside through the field, trying to make sure that, hey, I'm not going to be at this big of a disadvantage with old tires.
Right in the middle of this is 5th place running TJ Roberts. Got your top 4 that have been able to get themselves clear of the traffic. Cato, Robinson, Saucier, and Kyle Gartner. We talk about Cato, we talk about Robinson. Corey Saucier starting way towards the back for this race. And also Kyle Gartner also started pretty deep in the field. Good runs for both of those drivers. And we talked about the fact that both of those drivers, Saucier coming in 3rd in points, Gartner -4, but 7th in the standings. With the troubles that Lawrence has had here tonight, we could be seeing Gartner up inside of the Final 4 heading into Dega next week.
Absolutely. Man, how big of a blow would it be to Robinson just to have Cato kind of drive off this thing in the last, I'd say, 60 laps? But that's currently what's kind of happening, where Cato's kind of beating him in his own game.
Definitely is, no doubt about that. I want to actually check back at the results from Texas, because I think that it was actually a very similar situation there, where James Cato was actually back in traffic for a good portion of that race, and Robinson was one of the strongest cars in that event, but Cato was able to mount a late race charge, take the race lead, and kind of left everybody else in the dust. It could be a case of deja vu here tonight at Iowa, but Robinson's not letting him get away. He is still on his back bumper, less than a car length behind, and he's still got time to work with here as well. About 60 laps left to race here at Iowa.
And here's the thing, that's kind of where you got to start doing a few of things here. If you're Cato, you really got to have Robinson kind of burn up his stuff here trying to get around you. You need to be the biggest roadblock that has been known to the state of Iowa. I mean, you have to block him and make sure that he kind of overuses his stuff, trying to burn up his tires, trying to get around you. So, hey, when you finally decide to go, you can actively pull away from him. Now, if you're Robinson, you want to push James Cato more than he really wants to. You have to make him overdrive his stuff, kind of use his tires up. Since, again, if he overuses his stuff trying to overdrive you, you'll eventually end up overtaking him with just how much he's overdrove it. And really, Robinson's trying to make that charge to the bottom now. I don't know.
See if we can get the power down off of the corner. They're going to stay alongside of each other. Advantage to the 3 on the backstretch. Robinson again going to try there on that top side. Yeah, and remember, as we documented back just before that last caution came out, that Cato was reeling in Matthew Robinson. Now, obviously, I think that the ability to get through traffic played a big part into that, but it also could have been the case that maybe, just maybe, James Cato has a slightly faster long-run setup than Matthew Robinson does. But now as he slots back into 2nd place, back in that dirty air, it might be a moot point.
That's the thing where, I mean, even though it's kind of a small track like this, draft is still important. Now, it doesn't have that much of an effect as the high downforce package would, but draft definitely still helps you kind of drive back up there and get right on his bumper, right? I mean, Robinson doesn't have any.
There's a couple of drivers in the field that I do not believe can make it the rest of the way on fuel. They will have to pit before the closing stages, but they tried the wave around strategy here under this latest yellow. TJ Roberts and Angel Santiago, I believe they will still have to hit pit road. Jordan Stenzel's going to be close, but I think he's still going to have to hit pit lane, and Zachary Woods. Right now, and there's the caution.
Looks like a competition caution.
Well, that just saved a bunch of drivers that I just named off there, because now they were able to successfully get one of their laps back with the wave around, and now they'll be able to come down pit lane.
Let me go ahead and see if I can get a little bit of admin clarification for this. One moment.
All right, we'll see if we can find out why the caution was thrown here. This is certainly going to help TJ Roberts and Angel Santiago. They are going to remain on the lead lap. They'll be able to come down pit road now and put on 4 fresh tires. This also is going to benefit James Jones in the 10. He was the lucky dog. He had about 3.5 seconds between himself and Ryan Phillips. So 8 drivers will be on the lead lap when we go back green. And with only 17 laps on their tires, I don't think we'll see any of our race leaders come down, which will more than likely take the possibility of drivers trying the wave around strategy again out of commission. Well, more the fool me. Here come the race leaders down pit road.
All right, so what it sounds like what happened is, I mean, some of these guys just didn't get their laps back for getting the wave around, so it looks like they're putting a caution out, making sure that all of them kind of get the laps back that they're required to.
All right, so we'll try and update once that is complete of who is where and how many laps down. believe it is going to be officially 8 drivers on the lead lap when we go back green flag racing here. And that was interesting. Matthew Robinson came down pit lane. He led the leaders down and did not stop in his pit stall. Instead, just drove right through it, as did James Cato. Would that be possibly to try and get this scoring error fixed, get some of these drivers ahead of him?
Actually, he might have put himself in a really bad situation. It does not sound like they were supposed to pit. So all 4 cars came down. Robinson may avoid a penalty here because he didn't pit, but again, he still did come down, so he did forfeit his position.
Robinson and Cato came down, did not pull into their pit stall for a pit stop. Corey Saucier and Kyle Gartner, on the other hand, they did. And Jeremy Richmond did not come down pit road. Right now, he is being scored on the lead lap. So we're going to have to wait until all this settles out, figure out who exactly is running where, as this is making things a little bit confusing. But I can definitely understand with the whole problem of getting drivers scored where they need to be after the last caution. You want to make sure everyone is in the absolute correct position here for the final corner of this race.
I mean, here's the thing. You kind of can see it where, I mean, I can understand a miscommunication, but at least heads-up awareness by both Robinson and Cato to realize, like, hey, I made a mistake. I don't need to be here. And they still kind of avoided taking service.
Right now, unofficially, Jeremy Richmond is your race leader. We'll find out if he's going to be the one to bring us back to green. The moment we're going to step aside for a commercial break, let them get this thing all settled out as we're about to enter into the final 25% of this race. 50 laps to go as they hit the line here for the Black Gate Security 200 at Iowa Speedway. You're not going to miss a thing. We'll be back for the green after this FRN Side by Side.
Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Garner, and Teague. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you could only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine. Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Garner, and Teague. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you could only get in an IndyCar. So,
getting ready to go back green flag racing. Looks like we've got everything settled out. Well, nope, we got the lights back on atop the pace car here. All right, so we got a little bit more clarification from the league admins of the drivers that came down pit road, the drivers that stayed out. Looks like right now 10 drivers will be on the lead lap when we go back green here, Matt.
Absolutely, and it seems what happened is when a lot of these drivers came around for a wave around, it didn't give them the wave around, pretty much the lap back they were supposed to have. So what happened was admins decided to throw a caution, kind of get everyone back on the same page. However, no drivers were supposed to pit under that last caution. However, we saw the top 4 come down anyway. Since the top 4 came down, they all forfeited their position, so they all go to the back of the pack. The ones who did take service versus the ones who didn't take service doesn't matter. They all came down, so again, all of your positions are forfeit. So all those guys have to work their way back through the field, so that puts Corey Saucier and Jeremy Richmond now is in control here.
Yeah, guys that we saw running pretty much the latter half of the top 5 most of the evening now are your front row, with Angel Santiago alongside Kyle Gartner in row 2. You then got the lap machine of Ryan Phillips, who would be the first car 1 lap down, and the multi-lap down car of Jordan Anderson making up row 3. So a very interesting lineup here as the green flag flies back in the air, and Corey Saucier on the top side swings around to take the race lead into turn 1. Now, other drivers that got back on the lead lap there included Jordan Stencil and Zachary Woods. Bear in mind, both of those drivers, along with Angel Santiago, they are still going to have to pit before the conclusion of this race. Drivers that did take service under that yellow included Saucier and Kyle Gartner. Also, the 11 of TJ Roberts, so he now can make it on fuel.
Looking back with Matthew Robinson and all those guys, it is like a hornet's nest back here. Everyone's trying to get through.
Robinson in the middle of almost a 3-wide situation there. Anderson, he will pass. That's David Modespa up on the top side now. James Cato hurt even worse as he's back in the 8th position. Robinson right now in 5th, but these guys, as you mentioned, having to deal with a lot of traffic. And, when we start heading now into 50 laps or less to go, this gets to the point now where we stop saying it's a long ways to go and a lot of opportunity for a comeback.
I mean, I got to point out, let's just shine a light on Saucier here for a minute. Saucier started in 22nd, 1 spot right ahead of last place, worked his way all the way up to 1st. He has gained 21 positions since the start of this race. And you got to imagine, he did not expect it to end up this way.
I mean, we were talking about it that, it seemed that he didn't really have the strong car, to be able to compete just based off of times he was laying down in practice, the qualifying time that you just alluded to, and started towards the rear of the field. But he got through the early carnage, the 3 early yellow flags, and I'm almost wondering, Matt, you touched on it, drivers getting their cars set up for the nighttime conditions, just riding it out during the daytime conditions. I wonder if that's exactly what the 24 did.
Absolutely, but I think I've learned a little bit, at least about James Cato's car. His car does not do well in traffic. It seems like it really likes that clean air, doesn't like another car being in front of it. Why Robinson's car, I mean, he can kind of go clean air, dirty air. I mean, wherever he goes, he's fairly solid in it. But it definitely looks like that 3 is a little bit more catered towards clean air driving, it appears.
Just saw him get around Angel Santiago for position. Santiago's out there on old tires. About 70 lap old tires. He did come down pit lane when other drivers like Robinson and Cato did, so it's kind of thrown off our telemetry, but he is out there on old tires and cannot, according to our numbers, make it on fuel. Stencil in the 64, however, can. He's now going to try and get around the lap machine of Noah Owens, and there's Cato back there trying to maybe make a 3-wide move going into turn 3 here with the 9 of Christopher Lawrence and the 73 of Patrick McQuaid.
Now, I got to ask you, with all those guys who pitted, I mean, what do you think their emotional kind of states here at the moment where, I mean, you think they're kind of, I don't want to say kind of bent on getting, back to the lead, but, I mean, do you feel that sense of urgency of, hey, now instead of battling for the lead, you're put back here in the pack and you've really got to start fighting your way back through?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not certain that with the case of Robinson, because we know he has a fast car, if he's at a sense of urgency just yet, but I think he's definitely driving frustrated for 2 reasons. Number 1, he's back there outside of the top 5 on this restart after having the dominant car of the
TJ
day.
Roberts coming down the pit road.
Roberts, I had projected able to make it the rest of the way. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Actually, he and Angel Santiago cannot make it on fuel, but back to your point there about Matthew Robinson, not only did he restart outside of the top 5 after having the strongest car of the day, no doubt, but also those drivers like Saucier, Gartner, Richmond, they took on tires when they came down pit road. So that is about 15 lap deficit on his good years to guys like Corey Saucier and Kyle Gartner, which means that his closing up the gap between himself and those two is going to have to be even slower of a process.
True. But you got to wonder about the other 2 who did actually take their stop and their full completion. So you got to be kind of scratching your head there and, say, hey, I could have had fresher tires. So I don't know.
Ryan Phillips is going to move up out of the way now of Matthew Robinson. I thought a couple of laps ago that Robinson might be wrecking the 43 because Phillips was putting quite a number of blocks on him down the back straightaway.
I'm going to tell you one guy I'm really behind to look out to make sure he didn't wreck a car. It had to be James Cato in the 25. The 25 really has been running Cato all the way down to that bottom. And I'm kind of surprised Cato just hasn't sent him.
Cato is finally going to clear him, I believe, here into turn 3, putting the aforementioned Zachary Kitzler back in his rearview mirror. Kitzler right now 1 lap down in the 10th position. Phillips, that we just saw there, battling with Matthew Robinson, he is the first car 1 lap down. Brought out the 4th caution of the evening, and would love to have a caution come out here to put him back on the same lap as the leaders, as right now 8 drivers on the lead lap after TJ Roberts made his pit stop. Whoa!
I mean, the biggest.
car
Oh,
on the
Ryan
wall.
Roberts! Oh! Not going to bring
the-
out a caution, though. It's not on the racing surface.
Up down there on the, what would be the road course section of this short track. Yes, they do run a road course here at Iowa. Well out of harm's way, no yellow flag going to fly. TJ Roberts, he was a driver that just mentioned was on pit road. And this is interesting because Ryan Phillips earlier on in this race had just come down pit road with fresh tires. Almost makes me wonder if these drivers get so used to what the car feels like out there on old tires, then they get out there on slicks and they either find grip or lack thereof going through the turns that wasn't there before.
That's the thing where you want a caution to come out so badly to kind of make sure you still stay on that lead lap, but obviously you don't want to be the caution. And TJ just has not had a really good kind of start to his green flag section. Obviously had to come back down, get new tires. But when he's racing the 43 to kind of get a spot, he ended up locking up the tires, running up the hill, and we saw the end result there.
All right, remember when I said that Matthew Robinson I didn't think was at the point of driving frustrated yet? I amend my statement. He tried to get a run there on his teammate out of turn 4 and maybe made his first mistake on track of the day, getting that outside wall. So apparently he is feeling the sense of urgency now and might be making some mental mistakes.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I'm looking at Corey Saucier here. Saucier has about a 9-second gap on Robinson, and again, that's a lot to make up, but assuming that he may not have to come down for any more pit stops, he's good to go to the end. That's dangerous, especially on aging tires.
If you're Corey Saucier, you do not want to look up in the flag stand and see a yellow flag, because right now you've got this race pretty well in hand, 30 laps to go, and as you mentioned, over 9 seconds back to the fastest car of the evening, Matthew Robinson. However, if a caution flag comes out, then I think the entire race shifts back into the advantage of the 99, because then he can come down pit road, take on tires that he did not take down, or take on when he did that pass down pit road under the last yellow.
I mean, if you're Saucier, you're wondering why you didn't buy a lottery ticket. If you're Robinson, you're wondering, how in the world did you just get robbed of Monopoly?
Saucier, as mentioned, inside the top 4 in the point standings right now. He has 7 top 5s, or make that 4 top 5s rather, on the season, 6 top 10s, but he is still searching for his first trip to victory lane. Could it be here tonight and pretty much put him in a very solid position in the Final 4 heading into Talladega next week? We got a driver on pit road, that is Angel Santiago. That was expected. I believe that a couple more drivers will still have to come down pit road before the conclusion of this race, including 7th place running Jordan Stencil.
That's a difficult one. I'm kind of seeing Robinson still kind of hold a consistent almost 9-second gap on Saucier, but I'm definitely seeing that fade at least a little bit off, where he's starting to lose a little bit of ground. But he's getting back in the open air here without very much traffic, so he may be able to kind of track him down here.
Yeah, right now Robinson having to deal with Ryan Sizemore in the 8. And I was thinking maybe, just maybe, we were going to have all 23 drivers that started this race cross the line to take the checkers. Looks like the 25 of Zachary Kitzler will not. He came down pit road. He's turned left to the garage area. Looks like he will finish 22nd here tonight. He cannot drop to 23rd based on the number of laps that Josh Anderson is down, but looks like it took us 25 laps away from the conclusion to get our first retiree of the race here this evening.
James Cato had at least a little bit of a heart attack there with Zach Woods. He kind of almost lost it coming up the track in 4, and Cato almost lost the back end trying to keep off of Woods.
Cato there on the back straightaway. Saucier is just now going into turn 1, so over a lap behind the race leader. But now Saucier is going to have to deal with traffic. He's got about 5.5 seconds back to Kyle Gartner, but he's got Noah Owens there he's getting around. That's Jordan Stencil in the 64 who still has to make a pit stop. So A little bit of a nail-biter moment right now for the current race leader with less than 25 remaining.
Rock Salvati is one of those guys that obviously has not had the race that he's intended. But I'm obviously seeing him. He's had at least a little bit of improvement, but I still see he's kind of struggling with that rear end grip on the car.
Rock Salvati has not exactly had the best of lucks at speedways the last couple of times. He ended up, of course, having that engine failure back at Texas. He fared pretty well at Daytona to point his way into the playoffs, but a bit of a slow start to his playoffs last week at Chicagoland, and early struggles here tonight as well, getting involved in at least one, I think it might have actually been two, of our first 3 yellow flags of the night, and right now 2 laps down in the 17th position, as here comes Jordan Stenzel now to pit road as well. So the caution flag did not save Roberts, nor Stenzel, nor Santiago from being able to salvage top 10 runs.
Robinson's really having a lot of issues with that rear end grip now. I've seen him kind of slide through 4 there. But let's do the way too early kind of points fallout from this. Where, I mean, we're looking here at Robinson. Robinson's not going to lose that much if he continues running where he currently is. But the big guy who's probably going to gain a little bit has to be Saucier. He's going to gain probably at least 1 position on Daniel, or DJ Daniel. And, you know, looking at DJ Daniel, he currently is going to fall a ton.
He's going to fall a ton, as will Christopher Lawrence. Right now, at least Lawrence will be out of the top 4, and Gartner, who right now runs in second place, will be in. And actually, talking about DJ Daniel, 96 just hit pit road. Now, I thought that he hit within the fuel window to make it the rest of the way. Maybe I had my projections wrong on that one, so that's more spots the 96 is going to end up losing here in the closing stages.
Oh, so you mean my math home was incorrect, huh?
Apparently so.
Well, that kind of brings at least a little bit new dimension into it, but I'm still looking at Robinson here, and he's kind of falling off now. Kyle Gartner, he's hanging around, but it doesn't seem like he has the speed to fully get there.
He doesn't necessarily have to have the speed, he just has to have the position. If he can finish second place, he will move up into the top 4 heading into Talladega. Right now with DJ Daniel, with that latest development, as now Patrick McQuaid's on pit road. I don't know, Matt, these guys might not be able to make it on fuel, because these are guys that were some of the first on pit road during our last round of green flag pit stops, and now they're all hitting pit lane. The 73 and the 96 pitted with each other back on that cycle.
Well, but I'll riddle you another one. I mean, look at James Cato. Cato has been a quick car. Don't get me wrong. Cato's been a quick car, but he has not really been laying down quick laps this at least run. He's been kind of leaving it a little bit more conservative. Do you think he's trying to save to get to the end?
Might be saving fuel. That could be the case here. We'll have to wait and see how this one plays out. Who would expect a fuel-saving race at a short track, but could be the story we're spinning right now. But going back to what I was going to say, with DJ Daniel making that late pit stop, that drops him now down to 16th, and it looks like the driver that would take advantage there to possibly be in the final 4 heading into next week at Talladega would be J.R. Miller, who just now moved up to the 9th position after Jordan Stenzel came to pit road. So right now, looks like at least 50% of our final 4 could look entirely different from the start of this race to the conclusion.
See, I'm going to tell you why I absolutely hate strategy races as a driver, because it never fails. I end up always on the wrong side of them. But
you too, huh?
But easily, kind of when you're full on driving out, kind of having a broadcast, it is one of the most exciting races where honestly no one really knows the correct answer. We're just going to wait and see if I have enough at the end.
Yeah, usually it ends up coming down to us having to ask the drivers post-race, how close was it? Because up here, we do not know. The only person that knows is the driver there in the cockpit of just how far they can make it. And Corey Saucier had a moment there trying to get around drivers like J.R. Miller and Zachary Woods, but he's got himself back out into somewhat clear traffic as it's closing in on 10 laps remaining. Now, with the drivers that came down pit road, like DJ Daniel and Patrick McQuaid, that would now throw into question Jeremy Richmond, James Jones, Ryan Phillips, their ability to be able to make it to the conclusion, David Modespa and J.R. Miller as well. Drivers like Corey Saucier and Kyle Gartner, remember that they came down pit road and took service under the last caution. So I would have to assume that while everybody else is on a strategy in terms of whether they can make it or not, the 24 and the 49, they would have to be good, right?
By theory, yes. But certain situations can change on track. Now, currently, the 24 is not racing like he's having to save fuel. He's racing, at least it seems, almost at full race pace, but I've noticed that 49 started to back off a little bit more, and I'm wondering if the 49's not able to make it.
He has also been losing ground to third place Matthew Robinson. You were talking about James Cato possibly being...
Robinson almost lost it out of 4. He's managed to keep it straight.
And I was just going to mention about Robinson, with Cato possibly in fuel save mode, I mean, Matthew Robinson's on just about the same lap number of his last pit stop to James Cato. And remember, both the 99 and the 3, they came down pit road when they were trying to get that whole scoring fiasco fixed, and neither the 99 nor the 3 took on tires or fuel. So they are at a deficit in both categories to the top 2 up ahead of them. But it doesn't look like the 99, at least with the pace he's setting right now, that he is in fuel save mode.
See, this is where it's getting tough. I don't know. I honestly don't. He may have enough. He's not. If he doesn't have enough, he's bluffing pretty good. But I'm noticing the 24 is starting to back his laps down even more now. So I don't know if it's just tire wear or, hey, I'm trying to keep a little bit more.
It could be tire wear. It could also be the fact that he'd like to have his car have this clean air for as long as possible. You saw that he was about to catch a string of drivers up ahead of him momentarily, and he might like to manage the gap between himself and that group of drivers. He's got about 6.5 seconds. Well, it continues to increase here between himself and Kyle Gartner to work with, so no need to push that race car right now. This time by 6 laps to go for Corey Saucier. Nearly 7 seconds back to Kyle Gartner. The battle may be for second place here. Coming to
Seth,
this.
I actually need to go back to that restart because I'm hearing some chatter, and I don't know how much validity this has at the moment. But I'm hearing some chatter over race control that a restart might have been jumped. I'm gonna have to look back at this a little bit more, but I'm kind of curious how it was jumped and who jumped it.
Well, if I'm going to throw out a possibility, just remembering back to that restart, could be our race leader. Because he was not the leader when we went back green. Jeremy Richmond in the 98 was. And the 24 definitely beat the 98 back to the start-finish line. Whether it was a jump or not, I missed out on that. But I think that the car in question right now could very well be the guy leading this race.
I mean, looking back at the replay now, and I'm looking at the restart box, at least where it's painted on the track. And where it was painted on the track, the 98 was ahead, just the 98 didn't go. And I'm kind of looking at that here, and I mean, when the green light comes out, both cars I don't know. That's gonna be a tough one for end of race.
Definitely is. Well, if you're Corey Saucier, right now, goal is clear. Just get that car back to the start-finish line. Take this checkered flag because, if it ends up being called you didn't jump it, you've won this race. If it ends up being called that you did jump it, well, then you're just going to have to take your penalty. But at least, you'll know that you more than likely would have been the winner of this race without having the post-race penalty. 2 laps to go for this 24 car, by the way. But, that means we're going to have to kind of stick it out here, find out what this is, or at least figure out the fallout when we get to Talladega next week. But never a dull moment in the playoffs.
See, that's the issue. You have to determine when the exact green flag dropped and what was acceptable for the leader to go in. Because, like I said, the painted restart box of the track wasn't when the green flag was thrown. And, it looks like there's someone on the bottom of the apron on the front straightaway. It looks like Modespa. Modespa took down the wall.
Yep, Modespa with an issue there right in front of the leader, but the leader did take the white flag. Now, the good news for Corey Saucier, if he ends up not being called for the jump, he'll win this race. If he does get called for the jump, he would probably be EOL, and he would only drop down to 6th position. So not a whole lot of positions and points lost. But unofficially for the time being, it's going to be Corey Saucier picking up his first win of the season in the BackFire Sim Racing as he wins the Blackgate Security 200 here tonight at Iowa. And again, that's the first challenge technically. Started 22nd, worked his way up to the win.
But I tell you, Kyle Gartner is his crew has to be the advocate of jumping up and down. Like, he jumped it.
Yeah, right?
But absolutely, Corey Saucier. I mean, that just kind of drive from almost last to working his way through all the cautions, avoiding every bit of incident, and managing to risk kind of get himself in a situation to benefit from the top four kind of going down pit road when we weren't supposed to.
We can't say that he didn't have a strong race car. After working his way through all the carnage in the early stages, he pretty much was a mainstay around the third position. But the two strongest cars of the night, Matthew Robinson and James Cato, they're going to be finishing unofficially in third and fifth as they cross the line. Gartner in second, and Jeremy Richmond will be bringing it home in the fourth position.
Got to put down more smoke than that.
I mean, he hasn't been able to do a burnout yet this season. He's out of practice. James Jones. I mean, we talked about the comeback run that he was having at the midway portion of this race. He then had to make a pit stop, fell multiple laps down again, took a couple of waiver rounds. He finishes in sixth. Ryan Phillips, who brought out a late caution, he's going to be finishing in seventh. And how about David Modespa in eighth, Angel Santiago in ninth, and Jordan Stencil in 10th? No doubt about it. The final 70 or so laps of this race definitely playing a huge factor in who was able to salvage good performances and who's going to be looking for a little bit of a recovery route heading into Talladega next week, as looks like the crew's going to have to push that 24 car back to pit road, as I'm pretty sure the engine has gone south on his Chevrolet. We gave you the top 10. Here's a look at it once more, as only 6 drivers managed to finish on the lead lap. And 11th on down looks like this. J.R. Miller, who very likely here could be moving into the final 4 positions after the conclusion of this one, heading into Talladega. Ryan Sizemore will finish in 12th. Sizemore ran a good portion of this race towards the back. Patrick McQuaid will salvage 13th. Christopher Lawrence up in 14th. DJ Daniel 15th. These were 2 drivers there, the 9 and the 96, that came into the final 4 in points into this race. So Vadi, Woods, Hupkus, and Toyo Owens, a number of playoff contenders, not getting the days they were looking for here this evening at Iowa.
Absolutely. And right now it looks like Race Control is kind of reviewing the 24's incident, just seeing if it was in fact a jump start or both drivers go at the same time, and it's debatable. I don't know.
Well, we at least know that unofficially, Robinson and Gartner, they'll be finishing with top 3 finishes. It's a question on both of them whether they're going to finish second and third or first and second. So while we wait for Race Control to be able to come up with who our official winner is going to be, why don't we see if we can talk with our third place finisher, Matthew Robinson.
I'm having some trouble with cell areas.
Matthew, it's Matt and Seth up here in the booth. Got us?
Yes, sir.
All right, well, you had, without a doubt, the strongest car of the evening here tonight at Iowa. You bring it home third place, though. A lot of chaos kind of going on there in the final quarter of this race. What was it like from the perspective of the 99 car, and was being put back in traffic what really hurt you with the opportunity of picking up your league-leading 4th win of the season?
Well, I really don't have much to say. I shouldn't say anything that's on my mind right now. But me and James Cato should have definitely finished 1-2 right there, and it's a shame that we had to do that. They had to make all the calls they did at that last caution they had. But it is what it is, and we'll move on with the playoffs.
Well, I, unlike Seth, am not trying to get you in trouble. So does this give you any more ambition to go out at Talladega and just go dominate?
I'm just trying to survive there and go win the next 2. I know I can't win Talladega. Just trying to win the next 2, Kentucky and Homestead.
Now, Matthew, obviously, we know that your car is really good at the short tracks. You proved it here tonight. You proved it at Bristol. We know that you also have a very good 1.5-mile program as well. So, Kentucky, obviously, if you're able to survive Talladega, you're going to be still in one of those final 4 positions. Do you put a lot of emphasis on Kentucky with it being back-to-back 1.5-mile tracks and the championship being decided at that second 1.5-mile at Homestead?
Well, if nothing happens too seriously next weekend, we'll be in the final four. So I'm not too worried. Just trying to go win the next two, Kentucky and Homestead, and yep, trying to get what we've been working for all year.
All right, well, Matthew, congratulations still on a great performance here tonight. I know it's not the finish that you were hoping for, but still some good momentum here to start out the playoffs heading into that race at Talladega. And yeah, we'll look to see if you're going to maybe be able to lock yourself into the Final Four, possibly with a good performance in 3 consecutive weeks. We're going to give you the opportunity now for some thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Jeremy Richmond with JKR Motorsports. Couldn't do without him, man. He does a great job with the team. A little hard to deal with sometimes, but I love him. He's a good guy. So, but I'd like to thank Matt Rob Cutts, Main Street Auto Service, um, Junior's Mobile Detailing, and I'd like to thank my spotter. We had a good call right there at the beginning of the race to get us out, come up through the field and get us out front, and hopefully it would stay green like it did, and we pulled away a good amount until we had to pit again. So, yeah, it was just didn't play out to our favor at the end there.
Well, that's Matthew Robinson, unofficially 3rd place here tonight at Iowa Speedway. Once again, though, congrats on a great performance overall, a good finish for you, and we look forward to seeing what you're able to do at Talladega next week.
Yep, thank you.
All right, let's see if we can get our runner-up finisher here, Kyle Gartner. Hey, Kyle, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Gotcha.
All right, so we kind of saw this race play into the favor of some, not so much for others. You were on the positive side of this. We saw you had a strong car up there inside of the top 10 working your way through traffic, but then a couple of yellows that came out towards the end of this race slotted you up in that 2nd position. I mean, were you expecting that this was going to be a race of strategy like that, or did you have an entirely different mentality coming into the short track?
Initially, I didn't think it was going to be a strategy race. I thought we were going to have several caution pit stops, and as I saw people coming in early, I decided I was going to try to stay out and try to cut one of my pit stops down. But we ended up getting a yellow, and that just went out the window.
So I'll kick the hornet's nest. Do you think that Corey Saucier jumped the final restart?
Yeah, I can't really say if he did or not. Like I was just focused on who was on the outside of me on that restart, and to be honest, though, it doesn't matter. The 24 was just so fast. I don't think I would have caught up to him anyways. I mean, I had relatively fresh tires, just as fresh as his, and he was pulling on me, so I really don't think it would have mattered.
As we mentioned, some drivers doing well, some drivers struggling, and not only in the running order, but also in the playoff stands as well. Right now, we've got you projected inside of the Final Four heading into Talladega next week. However, the super speedways haven't necessarily been super kind to you. A 12th place and a 13th place at the 2 races at Daytona. So what's the mentality now that you're up in a Final Four spot going into the high banks of Dega?
I usually always lay back at super speedways, and I think that's the mistake because you usually get wrapped up in stuff. So my mentality is get to the front, stay up front.
Well, we'll certainly see if that strategy plays out for you. Congratulations on a great performance here tonight. Good job on working out the strategy as well to be able to get a podium finish. Kyle, we're going to give the opportunity now for some thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
Well, I'd like to thank you guys for putting on a great broadcast. My teammates, Chris and Chris, my friends, family that tune in every week, and all the sponsors, definitely Blackgate. They've done everything to put on this league, and I know a lot of stuff goes into this league behind the scenes. So I'd like to thank Hupka personally, for doing everything he can behind the scenes, because I know it's not easy.
Well, that's Kyle Gartner, brings it home second place here tonight at Iowa Speedway. He'll be easy to spot next week at Talladega in that bright green machine. But for now, enjoy this finish there, Kyle, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks. Hope I talk to you next week.
And let's now go down to Victory Lane and talk with tonight's winner, Corey Saucier. Hey, Corey, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I got you guys. How we doing?
Doing good. Man, we know that you've been consistent all season long during the regular season. At least the most consistent or second most consistent driver that was not able to find victory lane. How important is it for you to finally get that monkey off your back, finally snap that winless streak, and do it here in the playoffs coming into Iowa already in a Final Four position?
Yeah, this was a real big one. I've always felt like I've had pace with the top guys and just either strategy or some nights had a bad luck. Other nights just wasn't the top guy out there. And, I'll be honest, I probably wasn't the number one car, but I definitely feel like I had a number two or minimum a number three car. So I felt like we just had to be there with either some strategy or at least be in a position to go for the win. And just thankful that things broke my way.
So out of just curiosity, how shocked were you when, after all this happened, you ended up being the leader?
So I know on that last restart, I was technically in second, and I know there was a little bit of chatter that I might have jumped the restart, but in my opinion and in race control's opinion, I did hold back, but I was doing pace speed, and I feel like the car that was in first place kind of dropped back a little bit below pace speed, so I didn't want to get caught being stuck in front of him. So I fell back a little bit to make sure I was truly behind him. And once I saw those green lights hit, I just dropped the hammer. And I don't know if he missed it a little bit or what happened, but I ended up in front of him, and that was pretty much all she wrote.
All right, so Corey, when we looked at the playoffs schedule coming into this 5-race playoff schedule, the 4 races to be able to qualify for the Final Four at Homestead, two particular tracks jumped out. Obviously here tonight, the short track of Iowa, but next week as well, we'll call it the wild card race, the Super Speedway of Talladega. Now, the guy that we just talked with moments ago, Kyle Gartner, Super Speedways have not been entirely unkind, but they haven't been super kind to him, and it kind of seems like it's the same for you in terms of the statistics at Daytona, an 11th in the season opener and an 8th place finish in the second Daytona race. So, with that being said, what's the mentality with a win in a Final Four position heading into Talladega next week?
Yeah, still wanna have a good showing, get as many points as we can, obviously, but definitely want to play the conservative game, maybe to a certain extent. Don't want to force the issue. The draft packages change a lot since the update. It's definitely a lot harder to pass now, so can only pick our positions to gain when we can, and we just got to let the race come to us. And same thing, maybe just get a little bit lucky on a strategy with the pack or something, but hopefully we can keep those momentum going into next Friday.
Well, Corey, congratulations on your best finish of the season, obviously, bettering the runner-up finish you had back at Indianapolis a couple of weeks ago. You're the winner here tonight at Iowa. We're going to give you the opportunity now for some thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
Yeah, I want to thank Agni Graphics as well as Flavor Bomb and everybody on the CRC team. We've had a really good showing. Hopefully we can get Ryan a squeak in here to the top 4, and we can get both of us up and chasing that championship. Really proud of him and everybody on our team. So want to thank all those people, and hopefully we can keep it going.
Well, Corey Saucier becomes the first playoff contender to win a playoff race here in BackFire Sim Racing. Congratulations, Corey, and best of luck to you there at both Talladega and the final playoff race, setting up the Final Four at Kentucky in a couple weeks' time.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Well, we knew when this race started, Matt, it was going to more than likely be a race of strategy. We were talking a little bit more, though, about tire strategy. We get down here towards the end, and it came down to fuel for some drivers. It came down to restarts for others. And, of course, that caution that came out to kind of get everybody back to where they needed to be scored, it certainly played its part here as well.
Absolutely. And you got to Got to think a lot of these drivers ended up starting this race and think there's going to be a different outcome for them. But man, this is, if you want the definition as a shakeup race, had to be that.
We ended up having last week at Chicagoland a non-playoff driver go to victory lane. The points were super, super close. I think it was about 23 points separating the entire top 16 in the playoff standings. The points might expand a little bit after tonight, with several drivers having good runs, but several drivers not getting the performances they were looking for. But based off of what we had here tonight, with a playoff contender going to victory lane and a lot of moving and shaking inside the point standings, obviously it's Talladega next week. I have to think it's going to play its part into it. And what do we see? Does Talladega bring the points closer together again, or does it start to set apart two different groups heading into Kentucky?
I think, realistically, Talladega is really going to shake some things up. I mean, obviously, there's kind of a big field goal here where, I mean, listen, some guys who are usually up there in speed in the weekend could really be kind of shocked and shook by some of these guys who maybe don't have speed at some of these speedways, but hey, they're really good at super speedways, so maybe they can really pull something off here.
Well, so far this season, these drivers have been to Daytona twice. It'll be the first time that they take to the high banks of Talladega Super Speedway, and it is potentially with a Final Four playoff position on the line to battle for the championship in a few weeks' time at Homestead Miami Speedway. But that's going to conclude our coverage here tonight for the Blackgate Security 200 at Iowa Speedway. Corey Saucier picks up his first win of the BackFire Sim Racing. Matt, it's been a good one here tonight. A nail-biter down there towards the end, but that's what we expect at the short tracks. Appreciate you joining the booth.
Always appreciate getting invited.
Thanks to you for tuning in, folks. We hope that you'll join us this Sunday night as we're going to be bringing you coverage of the road course stop for the Clutch Drop Cup Series at Circuit of the Americas. That should be a crazy one as these drivers will head to Texas for some good left and right hand turning. But for Matthew Rodriguez, I'm Seth Cole. Thanks for joining us here tonight for the BackFire Sim Racing. Join us next Friday night when these drivers head to Talladega. You've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.